Hello, this is Professor Luce, and today we're here to talk about Chapter 15, which deals with language. Language is one of those things that you probably have a good idea about how to use language effectively. To an extent, you probably really know what things you should avoid, but maybe you're not quite sure on how to make some of those improvements. I will say that one of the best ways that you can make improvements is by watching other people speak. Not just your classmates, although that can be helpful, but really watch those that are professionals. And it doesn't have to be something like great historical speakers, although that's obviously a valid example. If you want to watch speeches from President Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr., that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, find something fun. You see people on television all the time that are pretty good at public speaking. Think of late night talk show hosts. Think of comedians that are performing on stage, watching TED Talks. All of those are really good examples of people that speak on a regular basis. They're normal human beings, but they're really proficient at using language in an effective way. You can even use Netflix if you want to. I know that there's a lot of people on there. I watch a lot of comedians or comedy shows on there, and that's perfectly fine as well. There are 6 basic things that you need to know about using language based on what the textbook tells us. The first one is one you should already know, which is avoid using jargon or technical language. That just means if you're talking about something specific in a field, try to avoid using jargon because people aren't going to be able to understand it. If you have to use it, keep it to a minimal use, and whenever you use a field-specific term, make sure you explain it in a way that everybody can understand. I once had a student that talked about caffeine in the brain, and he was a neuroscience major, and he lost the entire class because he used way too much jargon. So you want to make sure that you try to avoid using it whenever you can. The second thing is to use concrete over abstract language. What that means is using finite terms, being very clear in the language that you're using. So if you're telling us to create a dovetail when putting together a table, you need to identify that instead of just saying put the 2 pieces of wood together. There's a vast difference in how you put those 2 pieces of wood together depending on what you imagine it to be. Here's a good example. If I say imagine a chair, what are you going to think of? Maybe it's an office chair. Maybe it was a dining room chair. Maybe it was a king's throne. Maybe it was a wheelchair. Maybe it was a high chair. There's lots of different interpretations of what the word chair can mean. Chair is not incredibly concrete. That is much more abstract. So try to be more concrete whenever possible. The third component is to use imagery when you can. That means that you're going to create a picture in the audience's mind based on your language. You'll notice that some of the most eloquent speakers throughout history are able to do that. The fourth guideline is to create metaphors and use analogies. This allows the audience to connect what they already know with what you're trying to tell us. The fifth is really simple. Make your language gender neutral. I know a common phrase is you guys. Just think about your language ahead of time. If you write it down very clearly in your notes, you're much less likely to use gender-specific language. And the final thing is repetition. We talked a little bit about this with the introductions and conclusions, but if you want your audience to remember something, repetition is key. So don't be afraid to have repetition in your speech. That's it for language. I do strongly encourage you to go ahead and watch sample videos as frequently as possible. That's how you get better over time, is by imitating what others are doing. That's it. Thank you.